We have a special, yes, a special episode with a capital S episode of Hoops Across the Mountain State. This is episode 58. Yes, the big 5-8. And again, I appreciate all the love and support from all the episodes, especially ones moving forward and ones in the past as well. So, but for right now, let's look at the present. Let's look at what we got today. And wow, like I said, we got a special episode planned for you all. And I'm excited for this as well, but let's dive right into it. And before we get right into it, just to let everybody know, you guys can still buy t-shirts as well. Just shoot me a message on Facebook, or just shoot me a message on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7. And I would love to help you get a t-shirt. For those people that have actually bought a t-shirt and have been representing this podcast, I greatly appreciate it, just because this is a small brand and I'm trying to expand on it. So just by your little contributions, it's been helping me a lot. So it's making me stay positive. I appreciate that. But again, without further ado, let's dive right in to our guest today. And again, I am excited. I'm absolutely excited. My guest, for however you may be listening or watching this, because we are now on YouTube, has been a coach at a lot of different places. Let's go right into the places he's been at in the state of West Virginia. He was an assistant coach with Bob Huggins up at WVU, the Grand Land institution called WVU, obviously. He's served there for a few years. He was on the staff during the 2010 Final Four team. He was also on it during the 2008 Sweet 16 team as well. So a little bit of history with that. So we'll dive into that as well. After that, this is where it gets good, folks. You might want to strap in. He used to be the head basketball coach at Fairmont State. Now, you guys know that we had Jamel Morris on. He coached Jamel, along with having Joe Mazzulla on his staff as well. So we'll dive into that. He was also the 2017 MEC Conference Coach of the Year. Yes. After leading into a 34-3 season, they said, okay, deserving. He deserves it. I agree. Now he's going into his 5th season. Yes, his 5th season with the Youngstown State Penguins. And they are coming off their 2nd straight winning season, the first time since 2011, 2012, and the 2012-2013 season. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest for this afternoon or this evening or this morning's podcast, however you may be listening to this, for episode 58, Coach Jerrod Calhoun. Coach, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Taylor. Excited. Thanks for the great introduction, and excited to talk some basketball and some good stories today.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, just to give everybody a little bit of a perspective, how are you doing? How has the family been since people last heard from you?
Doing well, buddy. We're just plugging along here in the summer. You know, summer for college basketball programs are really, really important. We've got quite a few new guys joining our roster. So we've got 4 high school guys, 4 transfers. So we spent about 7 weeks here in the summer together. The next 2 weeks, our guys get to go home. So spend a little time with the family. Actually going to be down your way this weekend in Morgantown at Cheat Lake, hanging out with my family. So looking forward to that, getting back to the state of West Virginia, place that I spent 10 years at. So really, really excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's go right into it. And as always, guys, you guys know what I love to do. I love to go down a bunch of different directions with my guests. So we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to go over his coaching careers. Obviously, that's an obvious topic, but let's sort of dive deeper into that. Let's sort of dive deeper into the fact that where did this love for coaching originate from? So we'll talk about that. Obviously, talking about his coaching stint with WVU and Fairmont State, and also Youngstown State. Again, like what he's doing now, he just sort of gave you a little bit of a taste, maybe an appetizer, mini appetizers, I like to call it. But we'll go into that as well. But first, Coach, let's start where I started with the topics, and that is, when you look back at your long career of coaching, where did this love for coaching originate from?
I would say love of basketball. I just love basketball. I love playing it. I love being around it. Spent a lot of time at different parks playing the game. And I would say about 12, 13 years old, I kind of realized this was something that I wanted to do forever. Really don't feel like I ever really went to work. When you enjoy something, you have so much passion, you love, the game, it's never work. So I just love being around people, love coaching a game, preparing for games, preparing for practice. seeing guys get better, seeing guys reach their dreams, and then really competing and being part of a team. To me, there's nothing greater. But yeah, about 12 or 13 years old, Taylor, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. Been chasing that dream and fulfilling the dream for a long time.
So was there an event when you were 12 or 13 years old that just said, okay, I'll give it a try, or that's what I want to do in the future?
My local high school my brother attended North Royalton High School, had a really good team when I was in the 7th, 8th grade. I thought those guys were heroes. The varsity team. I'd go to the games, ended up having a great season. I think the best season in school history. Looked up to a lot of those guys and went to the camps, and those guys did such a great job with me as a youngster. That kind of knew that played a big part of wanting to coach. And then when I went to college, I walked on at Cleveland State University, ended up earning a scholarship, and was very fortunate. 2 people came into my life. Paul Molinari, a guy that's actually on my staff now. He's the godfather of Joe Mazzulla's son, Manny. A little tidbit there, unique story there. But, he was an assistant coach at Cleveland State and took me under his wing. And then my head coach, Raleigh Massimino, should be in the Hall of Fame, Villanova coach, great guy. Just looked up to him and really the way he treated us and the family atmosphere really sparked my interest even further to getting into coaching when I was done playing.
When you look at when you played at Cleveland State for Coach Massimino, what just sort of interests you on how he coached and the style of coaching that he presented to not only you, but the rest of your team as well?
Well, his knowledge. I think he knew the game inside and out. One of the best preparation guys that I've been fortunate enough to be around, getting us ready in preparation through scouting for a game was incredible. A lot of times we knew more about the opponent than our own stuff. He was big on scouting, but just the family atmosphere, having us over for pasta and dinners. And it was really a family atmosphere. Very, you've seen Villanova's tradition for years. That was originated by Coach Massimino. Jay Wright worked for Coach Mass at UNLV. Everybody takes things from certain coaches, and those were the 2 I would say, the preparation for a game and then the family atmosphere.
So I'm a big food guy, and you brought up food. I'm glad you did. What's the best meal that you ate while you attended a Coach Massimino family event?
I would say homemade pasta. His wife was a great cook. Coach would actually cook as well. Big on pasta at the Massimino household.
Now, would you have one plate or would you go multiple plates?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the very last times I was with him, Coach passed away a few years ago, but Paulie and I were down in Florida. He was coaching a Division II school. He was still coaching at the time. It was Northwood University. And we were at dinner, and I had eaten my first plate of pasta and spilled it all over my shirt. And he just started laughing, and it's something I'll never forget. And then I decided to get another plate, and then he got on me even more. But you never ran out of food when you were at Coach's house, that's for sure.
So were you more of a plain bread kind of guy, garlic bread, buttery toast? What was sort of your bread?
Yeah, garlic bread.
There you go.
Yeah, Mrs. Mass was big on the garlic bread.
You never thought basketball and food. Who would have thought?
Yeah, well, it brings you together. I mean, it's food brings everybody together. Everybody likes to eat, and everybody likes to talk basketball as well.
Absolutely. So you played a few seasons at Cleveland State, then you eventually went on to get your undergrad at Cincinnati, graduated in 2004. Then you became an assistant, or you became part of Coach Bob Huggins' coaching staff at Cincinnati. How did you get connected with Coach Huggins after college?
Yeah, Taylor, that's a great question. So I was coaching an AAU basketball team, the Cleveland Basketball Club. They're now called the Ohio Basketball Club. And the gentleman there, Mike Duncan, head of the program, kind of changed my life forever. He introduced me to Coach Huggins. He was recruiting a couple of our players, and Mike really introduced us, together, and we hit it off. Coach Huggs knew I wanted to get into coaching. My playing days were over. And next thing you know, I ended up being a student assistant at the University of Cincinnati, and the rest is history. But funny story, Taylor, he was recruiting both those kids on our roster, and both of them ended up going to Ohio State. So I was just shocked, number one, that they went to Ohio State over Cincinnati back then, because I thought Coach Huggins did a great job recruiting those guys. But secondly, I thought I was going to be out of a job. It wasn't a package deal or anything like that, but I think it showed, what type of guy Coach Huggins is. He was loyal to his word and said, come on down to Cincinnati, finish your undergrad. You can help out with the program. And that's really kind of where my career took off. I left there, Cincinnati, then went to Walsh University. He helped me, along with Dan Peters, get me that first assistant job. And, I've been on the move ever since.
Before we continue discussing your basketball journey, I want to take a step back and branch off real quick. And that is, you mentioned how you coach an AAU team. And I find this fascinating. So from that point, and now being a Division I head basketball coach, do you see any differences between whenever you coached that AAU team back in the early 2000s to AAU today when you go out and recruit a kid?
Some programs get to practice more than others. We took it very seriously, and we had a lot of local kids, so we were able to practice and get that camaraderie and that chemistry. But to me, AAU basketball is really, really important for college coaches, because we don't get the opportunities to get out during the season, to see a bunch of kids during our own seasons. We get one off day, during the season, one mandatory off day. Typically that's on Sunday. So in order for us to go out recruiting to high school games, we're taking time away from our current team. So that's why AAU basketball is so important. You can get out to these tournaments, see multiple teams, see them play multiple games. I have great respect for so many great AAU programs around the country. And really, that's how I started. So, it's a really big component to what we do here at the collegiate level. And certainly it's evolved. I think it's very competitive. You look at some of the major shoe companies, they've got great teams, great sponsorships. They're really invested. These kids are getting a chance to travel all across the country and play in front of college coaches. So it's a unique opportunity for them.
When you look back at, let's take it from this then. Big scale, big idea kind of thing. So when you look at a player that's wanting to pursue either your program or just Division I program, just looking back as well when you coached AAU, but player development, I know it could be different. How do you go about teaching and practicing with different players that have different attributes, different mentalities and stuff like that at such an early age?
Well, I think that's part of coaching, blending the pieces. Basketball is like a puzzle. You've got to get all the pieces to really fit. Here at Youngstown, we look for a certain style of player, really at each position. Taylor, we've kind of defined what we're looking for. But I think at a young age, that's why I love camps. I love having camps. We've got some elite camps coming up where we've got kids coming in from all over the country. I think these camps are a great opportunity to work with the players, get them on your campus, teach them. There's so many tools out there now with social media and all the different training. Kids are kind of spoiled. Back in the day, you had to go to the park and play, and nowadays there's so many different trainers, and I think it's awesome. I think that's why you're seeing kids expand their games, getting better and better with all the new technology and all the different training systems there are. And, the number of trainers, you're seeing a lot of kids, start to train at an early age and developing the skills and understanding how to play. I think it's a good thing.
How did the Walsh job, going back to your coaching journey now, and how did this Walsh job become a piece of the puzzle for the much greater picture and a much greater idea that was set before you?
Well, I think the coach there, he's a dear friend of mine. I think he's probably one of the most underrated coaches in all of Ohio. He's been at Walsh his entire career, Jeff Young. He played there, was a graduate assistant coach, and now the head coach for a number of years, won a national championship. We were part of that team our first year there. I left Cincinnati as a student assistant, went to Walsh and won a national title, and had a player get drafted in the NBA draft, a young man named Robert Whaley, and thought, man, this coaching thing's really easy. We first year in, we won a national title, and we see a Division II player get drafted in the NBA draft. And I believe it's the last player to get drafted, if I'm not mistaken. So Walsh played a big part of my development. I had no idea what I was doing at that time. Jeff was a great coach, one of the best coaches I've ever seen. Taught me so many things, and you had to wear a lot of hats. I was not only the basketball coach, but also the golf coach. On Fridays, I believe it was, we had to do bingo. We cleaned up bingo. You had to wear a lot of hats back then. And I think, every coach, when you start out like that, grinding, doing multiple jobs at a university, you learn hard work. And Coach Huggins gave me great advice on taking that job, really encouraged me to do it. And that's, of course, where he started and, built a national championship program at Walsh many years ago. And the tradition there has been there for a long time, dating back to Hugs. But Jeff Young was really the first person to really train me and show me the ropes.
You talked about these hats. Now I'm very curious about what you mean by hats. If you could just give the audience a little bit of better perspective of what you mean by hats. So what's your favorite hat?
Well, I mean, that's laundry. That's, that's sweeping up floors. That's doing travel. That's driving the team bus. Just a little bit of everything. You got to wear multiple hats, especially back then. Times have changed. Most staffs are much bigger now, but this was early 2000, so we didn't have the budgets. We didn't have the number of people. Being a NAI school at that time, wearing a lot of different hats means, you got to do a lot. You got to be willing to put a lot of time in, spend a lot of hours, and it was well worth it.
So you finish up at Walsh, then Bob Huggins gets the job at WVU, and then you come in 2007 as well. How did Hugs get back into contact with you after your stint at Walsh?
Well, we've always kept in contact. Hugs is really kind of a big brother to me. Obviously, the biggest mentor that I've ever had. I just really wanted to be part of him coming back to West Virginia. Really knew what it meant to him coming home. He left a great situation at Kansas State. I believe he had the #1 recruiting class in the country coming to Kansas State. So I think that shows you what West Virginia, the university, the state meant to Coach Huggins. Really wanted to be a part of it and was fortunate that he asked me to come. And, I learned a great deal in my 4 years as director of basketball operations. I got to work with some great assistant coaches in Billy Hahn, Larry Harrison, Eric Martin, Josh Eilert was on our staff. A lot of great managers that now have went on to become Division II head coaches. So it was just a great staff, great camaraderie. And we were fortunate, we had some really good players in the program. Darius Nichols, Deshaun Butler, Joe Mazzulla, Wellington Smith, John Flowers. These are all guys that, Coach Beeline had recruited. But I'd never seen such a great job by our staff and really the players buying in to a new coach coming in, because usually that takes a few years with philosophies. But Hugs did a masterful job. And that first year was Darius Nichols. Really did a great job leading our guys and Deshaun and, some of the younger guys, Coach Joe Mazzulla at that time was a little bit younger. They all kind of bought into the mission, and we ended up going to the Sweet 16, and beat Duke and beat Arizona. And, it was just a great start to a great run.
I find this fascinating because your first season at WVU, you're part of a great roster, like you just mentioned, a lot of great names as well. But I like to think about it like this. You're a coach, and a lot of the guys that were on that roster that first year are either a head coach, or they're an executive in a professional office. For example, Deshaun's an assistant coach at Wheeling University under Chris Richardson. That's a connection. Joe Mazzulla, he's now the head coach of the Celtics Summer League team, and he's been on staff as an assistant in Boston for a number of years now. Johnny West, he's a guy that is on the Golden State Warriors, was in the Golden State Warriors executive office. And then also you mentioned Darius as well. Darius, friend of the program. Darius is a Division I head coach at Radford. So I find this really fascinating because not only is it a player fraternity kind of thing with just coming back, the love that they get from Coach Hugs and stuff like that, but also it also seems like there's a coaching stir up as well, I guess you could say, with guys just being mixed into the pot, learning from not only you but Coach Huggins as well, because you were there for 5 years. What makes Coach Huggins' coaching style so unique that bleeds over into his guys as well, and just sort of rubs off on them as well?
Tough question. I could probably write a book on it. Definitely could talk for hours. Just his loyalty. I would say that's the strongest word to describe Coach Huggins is his loyalty, his determination, his passion, his preparation. It's what makes him a Hall of Fame coach. It's long overdue. He should already be in the Hall of Fame. In my mind, the court at West Virginia should be named after him already. And really, there should be a statue outside of the Coliseum for what he's done for, that program and that state. There's such great tradition at West Virginia, dating back to the Jerry West days and Hot Rod Hundley. And, Hugs is all about honoring the tradition. And part of his legacy to me is outside the Sweet 16s, Final Fours, all the wins and all the sellouts is, his ability to go out and fundraise for a $30 million practice facility. That is unheard of, what he was able to accomplish. He had these big aspirations for our players and really the former players at West Virginia. And I was a part of a lot of those meetings. I sat in on some of those meetings, drove him all over the state, flew with him. And I saw the passion that he had to fundraise, to build a practice facility for the players, current players, but also the former players. All those guys have their own lockers. They have a place to work out in the summer. He did that for them. And that's leaving a legacy. And that's what it's really, that's what Bob Huggins is about. Joe Mazzulla, I was in his wedding. I was the best man in his wedding. We're best of friends. Darius Nichols, we're very, very close. I talked to him yesterday about some transition drills and rotation drills. Deshaun, very, very good friend. So I think it's just a family. Once you're a Mountaineer, you're always a Mountaineer. It's hard to describe until you're in it. Being a West Virginia fan, you understand what the Mountaineers mean to the state. But there is no pro team. And I know a lot of people have talked about it, but until you're there and you see that passion every night, that's what it means. And it's something that will never, it'll always be ingrained in me, what Hugs has taught us, and the legacy that he's leaving and living every day. But that's what his fraternity is about. And it's growing, that's the neat part, Taylor, as you said. I guess it's a good and bad, right? It's growing, but it means we're all getting older. We got a lot of guys out here now that are done playing, getting into coaching. So that's kind of what it means to me.
Okay, so I got to ask. So we've mentioned the Coach Hugs already, and I'm a big story guy. So what is your favorite or maybe even most memorable story of Coach Huggins?
I would say probably what sticks out in my mind is the time Deshaun went down. And I hate to talk about that moment, but we kind of all know who Bob Huggins is. I think sometimes the perception is, that, he might get on a player. He's some mean guy. And in fact, he's the total opposite. We a lot of guys call him Huggy Bear because he's a bear. He hugs you all the time. And I think that moment when he was hugging Deshaun on the ground, I think the whole world saw, and certainly the 72,000 people that were in attendance saw what Bob Huggins really is. And that's just a passionate, caring coach that would do anything for his players. And it was a sad moment, but in that time, I think we were all shocked. Nobody really knew what to do. There was one guy that did, and that's Coach Hugs. He was going to look after his player, make sure his player was okay.
So I'm gonna go back to what you just said a few minutes ago. And that was the fact that you're feeling old. Well, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make you feel old. So I'm 21 right now, and you just described a huge moment in Mountaineer basketball history. I was in the fourth grade when that happened. Think about that. I was in the fourth grade. Another fact, I was actually at that game. My dad, uncle, and I all went to that game, and that was a great experience. Say the whole weekend, but yeah, I definitely agree with what you just said with the fact that nobody knew what to do except one guy. Fitting, it's fitting. So
I mean, our trainer did, Randy Metter. He's the unsung hero of the Mountaineers as well. Does a great job. I think him and Josh Eiler do tremendous job. Those guys sometimes don't get the press as maybe the assistants, but yeah, that time it was just a neat thing to see Hugs react in a hard, difficult time.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I like this aspect of your tenure at WVU as well because you were on staff whenever WVU beat Duke, but also you were on the staff whenever they made it to the Final Four. So I got to ask the question: similarities or and differences between the two teams? What did you see that was similar between the two? Were there anything similar between the two? Just sort of walk everybody through that.
Yeah, I think the similarities was the leadership. Obviously we had some great leaders that first year, as I mentioned, some upperclassmen. Same thing on the Final Four team. I think both teams had multiple leaders. It wasn't just one guy. It was a team full of leaders buying in. The differences are, I think the Sweet 16 first year we got there, I believe that was in '07. We got better as the season progressed, right? So we weren't the best team in the Big East at that time. We were in the Big East, but we got better and better and better. And the players really bought into the vision of Coach Huggins, and he got them better. We got it better at practice, and we became very, very scary at the end of it. Obviously, we took Xavier to overtime and probably should have made the Elite Eight, and then would have eventually played UCLA. But we beat two teams I think most people didn't think we could. Final Four team had great expectations going into the season. I think everybody knew how talented that team was. That team was much deeper. We played a lot of guys. Some of the guys on that bench played a huge role. Cam Thurman, some of the other guys, Johnny West. There was a lot of great players on that Final Four team that some don't get a lot of notoriety, but everybody bought in that year to what Hugs was talking about, and that was to me the two biggest differences of those teams, but two great teams.
We'll talk about having Mazzulla on your staff here in a few minutes, but before we do so, I would feel guilty if I didn't bring this up, and that is his game against Kentucky. Whenever he heard the news that Truck was going to be out, and he had to assume that role as the floor general, point guard, whatever it may be. Did you see a mood swing? Not really like a mood swing, but did you see like an attitude change and more of an enthusiastic level get pumped up into him?
Well, I think when Truck went out, all of us were very, very shocked. Anytime there's injuries, the next man's got to step up. But, that was late in the season. We had a good rotation. Truck had a great year. Everybody kind of knew their role. So anytime there's injuries that late in the year, I think as coaching staffs, you gotta think on the fly. You got to adjust. Fortunate for us, we had a great backup point guard. Joe was really the backup, and he was a guy that always under pressure really succeeded. You go back to that first year's team, his game against Duke over there in Washington, D.C. in the second round, we went to the Sweet 16, was masterful. Coach K compared that to Jason Kidd. I still have that clipping hanging in my basement. So I think as a staff and as a team, we kind of rallied around Truck. Every Truck had a great personality, but I think everybody stepped their games up, and certainly Joe was unbelievable. Once again, in that regional, he was a force to be reckoned with. He guarded everybody, made big plays, and just that's the type of guy he is. Even to this day, he's a worker, and just steps up in big moments.
So you spend 5 years with the Mountaineers, then the job at Fairmont State comes about. How did you get connected with Fairmont State?
Yeah, great question. When the job came open, my wife is a graduate of Fairmont State. So, Fairmont State is 20 minutes down the road, 25 minutes from Morgantown. I had been living in Morgantown, coaching for the Mountaineers, got moved up to an assistant coach, kind of working my way up, and never in a million years would I thought I would take a Division II job from a Power Five. Not too many people do that. So, after talking with Coach Huggins and talking with my wife, Sarah, I thought it'd be a great move. I wanted to be a head coach. I knew Fairmont had great tradition. It just needed to be revitalized a little bit. And it was probably the best decision of my life. It was a very gutsy decision to make. Don't think I would have made that decision without Coach Huggins' blessing. He had a similar path. He was a head coach at Walsh University, so he understands, how good Division II basketball is. And Fairmont was really, really good for me. And it was just a perfect match. It was a town that was starving for basketball to get relevant again. We got out in that community from day one. The first 100 days on the job, we were, having lunches, having dinners, trying to meet as many people as we could to get our fan base, get the support back up. I think the first week on the job, we raised enough money to redo the entire locker room. We renovated our theater room. We were so fortunate. Greg Darby from Little General, really stepped up in a huge way. Next thing you know, we had a theater room. And then after that, it was talk of renovating the gym. Our first year, we went to the NCAA tournament. I think it was the biggest turnaround in school history. The year before, they had won 8 games. It was just a group effort from our players, Isaac Thornton, Malik Stith, Brendan Cooper, Isaiah Hill. That first team was phenomenal. And I always joke, that year we only had 7 scholarships. If we would have had 10, we might have been able to beat West Liberty and get to the Elite Eight, and who knows. But my first year we only had 7 scholarships, so we had to figure it out. And each year our money grew, where we became fully funded program. And 5 years later, we sold the place out in a regional, brand new, redid the arena, a couple $1 million inside the Renton Arena, and just built the program the right way and had great players. I mean, the talent we had come through there with Jamel, Thomas Winbush, Matt Bengaya. Some of these guys are still playing professional basketball. Sham Godwells, Jason Jolly, Trevor Evans, just to name a few. These guys are Vontae Montgomery. I mean, these guys were big time players my 5 years there, and just it was an awesome run.
How did that core group of guys just continue this love for coaching for you? I mean, I know that you had a great core group of guys, but how did that just help you make your job a lot easier?
I think you're only as good as the guys you surround yourself with. So, real fortunate at West Virginia and Fairmont. We had so many good people, managers, coaches. The best programs are player driven. The players hold each other accountable. It took us a couple of years at Fairmont. The first year, Isaac was the leader. By year 2 and 3, Sham Godwells was our leader. And the players ran the program. They really did, on a day-to-day basis. I had a great staff, Paul Molinari, Joe Mazzulla, Mantoris Robinson, Neil Dixon, Chris Richardson. We had some really, really good coaches. These guys are all coaching around the country right now. And they were a big part of it, identifying great talent and really buying into the system we wanted to play. Taylor, last year we scored 96 points a game. We were one of the most, high-powered offensive teams in the country. We shot a lot of threes. We pressed. We played fast. Fans loved it. They lined up to watch these guys. And we had great battles, in the MEC, Jim Crutchfield, Danny Sancombe. That last year we had 3 teams in the top 4 in the country. I think we were 1, 2, and 4 in the country. The MEC was rolling. The MEC was one of the best leagues in America. And those are just great times, and you got better as a coach because the guys in the league were such great coaches and they were such great players. West Liberty, drove me crazy to beat those guys. That was a lot of hard work to finally beat those guys, have so much respect for what they built up there. But finally we were able to, overcome them a couple times.
Again, whenever we first started this podcast, even before we got on the air, I brought up how I'm a fan of the MEC. and just the level of basketball it is going up and down the court, a lot of offense and defense along the way as well, especially with West Liberty. But in your eyes, I want to get your perspective on this. In your eyes, what makes the MEC so unique and different among other Division II conferences?
I think that's a great question. Well, in the state of West Virginia, you only have 2 Division I schools. So outside of West Virginia and Marshall, the Division II schools in the state are getting a lot of attention. Metro News does a tremendous job of covering, that tournament. The tournament is big time. It's all over the state. For years, it was in Charleston. You had all the different cities and all the different universities traveling to one place down in Charleston, West Virginia for an awesome tournament. Now it's in Wheeling. It's just a conference I think gets a lot of coverage. It deserves a lot of respect. But it's a different type of league, until you coach in that league, it's hard to explain. It's like coaching at West Virginia. It's hard to explain. The teams can really score the basketball. 10, 12, 15, 18 threes is nothing. Some of the teams in that league can, shoot the basketball in their sleep. A lot of good players, a lot of good coaches. A lot of nice arenas, Fairmont State, big time arena. University of Charleston just upgraded their facility. The Waco Center in Glenville, big time facility. So I think it's just an awesome league. I think it's going to continue to get better because there's great coaches right now in that conference, and they're building great programs. It's a league that I'll always follow because I spent 5 years of my life in that league.
I completely agree with you. I really do agree with you. It is a high level competitive league as well. And I think you brought up a great point. If you had not coached in that league, you wouldn't truly understand. But the fact that you did, you get a lot more perspective on it. Yeah, I do see it. I do see that as well. But to continue this discussion, I want to bring up something that I think is jaw dropping to say the least, because the 2016-17 season was a tremendous year, not only for the program, but also just for your team. I mean, you were the 2017 MEC Coach of the Year. You helped lead Fairmont to an overall record of 34-3 in the program's first national runner-up finish since in that same year. And then on top of that, you helped lead Fairmont to its first conference championship in 21 years with a 21-1 conference record, and received the program's first NCAA Division II #1 ranking since 1976. About 1776. That's about 200 years off. But anyway, and then,
Close enough.
200 years, close enough, yeah. But yeah, I mean, what made that 16-17 season so unique and so passionately driven to just get better each day?
Well, Taylor, you bring up a lot of great accolades, things you don't really think about in that present moment at the time, how special that group really was. But very few days go by that I don't reflect on one of those players or think about one of those players or one of those moments. So, that's one thing as you get older. We joked about getting older earlier in the broadcast. You got to enjoy those moments. Sometimes in coaching, it's hard because it's always about the next game, the next day, the next preparation. That team was very, very caught in the present. They lived in the present. They didn't look ahead. They took every team very, very serious. But I think also they knew that we were really good. We had a lot of great pieces. Our bench was as good as our starters. Maybe them starters would disagree, but very, very deep roster, very player-driven team, very skilled at all 5 positions. We could pass, catch, shoot, and we were very long and athletic. The team that we lost to, Northwest Missouri State, lost to a tremendous program. Ben McCollum has become a friend of mine. We actually, during COVID, talked a lot of basketball. I believe he's won the last 2 out of 3 Division II national championships. Could be 3 out of 4. I can't remember. But Taylor, that team just had the it factor. It's kind of like the Final Four team at West Virginia or a national championship at Walsh. Some teams just have that it factor. And that team just had it from top to bottom. And I think our fans knew it. Every game that year, it was packed inside Renton Arena. It was, as we won more and more, the crowds got bigger and bigger. The West Liberty game, the Wheeling Jesuit games, then things were sold out. Student sections were rocking it was just neat to see, when you're part of something that's kind of built from the ground up, and you kind of see what it looks like at the end. It's just an awesome feeling. It's hard to describe. And you just kind of look around, and when we cut those nets down in the Elite Eight, to beat Wheeling Jesuit at the time, now Wheeling University, it was so real. It was just a surreal feeling. And then next thing you're headed out to a national tournament, teams from all over the country, and you're still really playing well. And it's unfortunate, I thought, we were going to win the national championship, but I'm just so proud of that group, really even beyond the basketball part, the legacy they left there in Fairmont, the impact that they had on that community, to restore a storied program, was really, really neat. And then, about 5 minutes after the game, I had to make the decision, really to come to Youngstown State. So I'll never forget, I was sitting outside of my hotel room, half crying because of the run we had, but also half crying because, I knew there was a possibility I could be leaving Fairmont State. So the first call I made was to Joe Mazzulla, and I said, "Where are you at?" And he said, "Well, at the time, he was with Maine. He was in the G League with the Boston Celtics G League." And I said, "Listen, man, I'm probably leaving. I haven't fully made the decision yet, but I've been offered this job, and I'm only going to leave if you take the job here at Fairmont State." So he called me back five minutes later and said he would do it. And I thought at the time it was the right thing to do for myself and my family. And knowing that Joe was coming, that he had been a part of recruiting some of these guys and been around them, and knew that he would kill it. That's when I made the decision that, I'm going to come to Youngstown, and it's been awesome. It's kind of that same feel that we had at Fairmont State. We're going into year 5. I think we got a great team, and great chemistry.
How did Joe Mazzulla sort of come on as staff for you? I mean, I know you coach him as a player at WVU. Now he comes on staff for you at Fairmont, then ultimately takes the head coaching position with the Falcons. How did he get connected with you, and how did you just sort of bring him into your coaching staff at Fairmont?
Well, just through, coaching him, being around him, just growing our relationship over the years. He's somebody that, I think, just stands for all the right reasons. He just is a fabulous guy. He loves basketball. His knowledge at that time was really, really good. And he brought just a different dynamic to my staff at Fairmont State. His player development, his relationships with the players. We were growing together. We always joked that we wish we knew what we knew now. We would want a heck of a lot more games at Fairmont State. But, I think we did okay. And, to this day, we've become best friends and, talk a lot more outside of basketball, talk about family, leadership. His wife, Kamei, is close with Sarah, my wife. So when they're back in Youngstown, Mikey, his oldest son, his stepson, his dad lives here in Youngstown. So they come here all the time and visit. And, I was in Boston, a couple months ago. So it was just great to have him on the staff. And then when he took over, I knew it was the right thing because he was trained and he was ready to go.
Talking about this transition from Fairmont to Youngstown, when you left, was it one of the more harder decisions that you had to make? I mean, I know that you left WVU to get the job at Fairmont, but was this a harder decision to make?
Oh yeah, because when you're leaving assistant spot to go become a head coach, it's a little different. When you're leaving a head coaching position to go to another head coaching position, you're impacting a lot of lives. You recruited these players, you spent a lot of time with their families. We had great success. We had 5 20-win seasons, 4 NCAA tournaments. You're coming off a national runner-up. The town's ecstatic. The fundraising, the renovations. We had established ourselves as a national top 5, top 10 team in the country. Guys were, getting overseas deals, playing in the G League. So it was difficult. It was a really difficult thing. But, Youngstown is an unbelievable place. It is a sports town. Everybody loves sports in our town. We're kind of the only show in town, similar to Fairmont. We don't have any pro teams in our city. The Penguins are a big deal. Have a great president in Jim Tressel, very fortunate that he's very, very active, in all of athletics, but just such a great leader and really transformed our university. And then Ron Stroll, our athletic director, played football here. So it's been awesome. It's been a great experience. We've had great players once again, people that really bought into the culture and the system. And it's been a great run. This league is very, very good. Taylor, very similar to the MEC. The Horizon League is really, really good. So you got to have good players. And we're really looking forward to this year's team. We feel like we're different. We're more similar to my Fairmont teams, where we're going to be very skilled. We're going to press. We're going to shoot a lot of threes, and we're going to be pretty deep. So it's been a lot of fun.
Before we get to, what happened last year, I mean, we'll talk about the 2 games you guys already played against WVU, but I want to go back to square one with you at Youngstown. When you first got to Youngstown, how difficult was it to start building a new foundation after you just established a foundation and built a culture at Fairmont? Was it hard, just trying to rebuild and build at a new location?
Oh yeah, there's no question about it. You're trying to figure out who's on campus. You're trying to figure out your roster. You're trying to build those relationships. You're trying to add pieces to the roster. You're trying to fill a schedule. You're trying to fundraise. You're trying to find a house to live in. Your family's living in a couple hours away from you. Transition is hard. Anytime you leave one place, go to another, it's certainly difficult, but that comes with the territory. The first couple of years is really about laying the foundation for what you're trying to do, down the road, what you're ultimately trying to accomplish. Sometimes jobs can be quicker than others, depending on the talent, depending on the buy-in. Our schedule is really difficult that first year, Taylor. We played 5 guarantee games. That means 5 buy games. We were trying to bring in quite a bit of money to help fundraise some of the things, redo our locker room, redo some different things, add a 4th meal for our players. So the first year of scheduling was very difficult. We played all over the country. And certainly that's settled down. And then now when you get in year 2, 3, and 4, you have multiple recruiting classes. So when you go to introduce an offense or a defense, it's not foreign to your players. So there's some continuity here with your coaching staff, with your players. But yeah, I think there's always that transition where you're trying to figure it out as a program.
When you first go out as a new head coach at a new program and you're out recruiting, and what's sort of your main, I guess, icebreaker conversation that you initially have with that recruit in your first year at a new program?
Well, I think what I like to try to do in recruiting is just really hear from them, hear their story. I love recruiting. I love people, love talking, love listening to podcasts. That's why I think these are really neat, and I'll go back to listen to Jamel's now that I know that you had him on. Recruiting is just about communication. That's all it is, getting to know one another. Trying to figure out what the recruit, what are their goals? What's important to them? What we were really first trying to sell is, our style of play, how we were going to play. What is our system? How are we going to play? And then really the city of Youngstown, the city here, they're going to support you. We've seen the last couple of years before COVID, we were top 4 in the league in attendance. So people are going to come, they're going to support you. We're going to play a different brand of basketball. We're going to get up and down. We're going to allow some of our front court players to really handle the ball, push the ball in transition, very unconventional way of playing. And then we're going to schedule people. We've played West Virginia, Indiana, Butler, Ohio State, Pitt, you name it. We've played these teams from the Power 5. So you're going to be seen on a national stage. You're going to be playing games on ESPN. And you're going to be playing in a great community, and you're going to get a first-class education, being a state school. We've got a great business program here in Youngstown. So that's really what we were trying to sell, Taylor, when we got here. But, you're really trying to sell yourself because it's your first year. Nobody really knows how you play. You're just trying to establish those relationships.
So I want to talk about a guy that I just find very fascinating. Looking at his profile over the last, day and a half, 2 days, is Nat Bohannon. And he was one of the first guys that was on the initial roster when you got to Youngstown. And he started all but 1 game as a Penguin. And I find that very fascinating. So in a nutshell, could you describe Nat Bohannon for people that don't know about him?
Well, I'm going to miss him. I can tell you that. He decided to go to Clemson. He's going to play for the Clemson Tigers this year. He was in town a couple of weeks ago. Love Nas to death. He was part of that first class with It was Nas and Michael Akuche and Garrett Covington. Those three kids came in together. Were really the foundation of our first recruiting class. All three of them played for me for 4 years. Both Garrett and Michael are going to play for me for a 5th year. They're coming back with the extra COVID year, but Nas was a warrior. Very, very relentless rebounder, finisher. Really what college basketball is about. Taylor got better and better. If you look at his numbers got better, his efficiency got better, and just a great kid. Earned his degree, and now he went on to Clemson to get a master's degree and play in the ACC.
Yeah, you brought up a great point because he went from 7.2 points his first season to 7.8, 11, then 16, right around 17 points a game his senior season. Yeah. So unbelievable, an unreal transition for him. So another guy that people may or may not know that is on your roster, or at least finished his first season with you all, and that's Alex Vargas. Vargas is a Wheeling Park High School graduate, and he's on your roster. So sort of walk everybody through from that perspective, because we know about him. We've sort of seen him play down in Charleston. What did you sort of see about Vargas that really stood out to you?
Well, two guys that really helped us in the recruitment of Alex Vargas was Billy Hahn, former assistant coach there at West Virginia, saw him many times and called me and said, "Listen, Jerrod, you got to come see this kid." Then I told my wife where I was going, and she said, "I went to high school there." But it was first Jason Slay, my assistant. His brother Tamar Slay played at Marshall University. So, they're from West Virginia. They're from Beckley, West Virginia. Obviously, I spent a ton of time in West Virginia. West Virginia is a state we want to recruit. We're very, very, very close, just a couple hours away from Morgantown. So when we first saw him, we really, really liked him. And then we went back the second time and said, yes, he's an absolute no-brainer. His high school coach was tremendous throughout the process. They were very good that year. We saw multiple games. He's going to have a bright future. He really knows how to play. He's big, he's strong, can make shots. The best thing about Alex Vargas is he's a very, very hard worker. He loves the game of basketball. He's a gym rat. And I think the state of West Virginia is very under recruited in basketball for whatever reason. I don't know why it is, but there's been some unbelievable players come out of the state. And we have so many people in the NBA, and basketball is such a big deal in the state of West Virginia. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So we hope it stays that way. So please don't tell anybody how under recruited it is. So I continue to get players out of that state.
Your secret's safe with me, Coach. Just between the two of us, your secret is safe with me.
Oh, good. But when it's on YouTube, everybody will hear me say that.
But I find it fascinating just because you have a guy in Jason Slay. Jason Slay recently became a new assistant coach at South Florida. You mentioned that his brother Tamar, who's also a friend of this program as well. And just walk me through Jason Slay. What made him such a unique assistant coach for you? I know he coached at Youngstown for a few years, but what made Jason Slay such a unique character to be around?
Well, just his energy. If you had to say, hey, what's one word to describe Jason Slay's coaching style or him as a person, I would say energy. He brought an unbelievable amount of energy into the building every single day. It was bittersweet when he left. It was something he and I had talked about for a few days. Great opportunity for him to go to South Florida. Was very, very tough, emotional, because we've gotten so close. He was part of the original staff group of people that came into Youngstown 5 years ago. So he really was with me every step of the way. But he's going to be a great head coach one day. I truly believe he will be a head coach. And not just a head coach, he's going to be a successful head coach because of his passion, his energy, his knowledge, and he can really relate to the players. And, those are all great traits to have in basketball.
So now moving away from coaching at Youngstown, we'll come back to Youngstown here in a second, but moving away from coaching for a second, you've been able to coach at the Division I, Division II, and NAIA level. And again, I find your story fascinating in this aspect because student athletes, especially in high school, think that if they don't make Division I, then they're not successful. They have not reached that point in their life. but you've been able to experience it on three different levels and coach at three successful programs as well. When you look at all three of those levels, what makes each of those so unique in that regardless of where the student athlete goes, they're going to be getting a successful collegiate experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's kind of sad that people have that perception of Division II, Division III, and NAI basketball, because it's the furthest thing from the truth, right? There's great players at D2, D3, and NAI. I've been very, very fortunate to coach at the highest level of basketball, all these different levels. So I just look at it as basketball. There's great players, great coaches. The games are great. The players are great. I've never been one of those guys to undervalue Division II and NAI D3. Actually, been a big advocate of it, and tell people all the time how great that level is. I was fortunate to go through those glory days of the MEC and see all those kids come through, the Haywood Highsmiths, the Seeger Bonifits, the Thomas Winbushes, the Jamel Morrises, Matt Bengayas, Brendan Coopers, guys that went on and played professional basketball. And you saw Jamel playing with the TBT team, the West Virginia team, being a big part of that. Kids should not think like that. When they go see that level of basketball and go play against those players, I think they learn real quick how good those teams and those players are at the Division II, III, and NAI level.
Looking ahead to next season, with this Delta variant still being out there, it's lingering around parts of the United States and surging in a lot of other places as well. But, with the level of concern going to next year, are you still concerned that next year may still be a repeat of last year? And that it's still a funky year with a couple of different restrictions still in place?
That's a great question, Taylor. I really don't know what to think anymore. I think last year was so difficult for so many people. Just a tough year all across this country. In athletics, we were fortunate enough that we got to have a season. The year before, we were supposed to play in a postseason tournament. That was a really big deal for our seniors and that team, and they weren't able to do it. So last year we did have a few cancellations, but we were very, very fortunate to be able to play games, compete. Of course, there was no fans. It was certainly different. We had to play back-to-back games, but when you're going through that and you've seen what people are dealing with, it's hard to really complain about, coaching and playing college basketball. Looking forward to this season coming up, I don't really know what to think. We've had a lot of different conversations within our league and within our university of what this could look like, the different precautions that we need to take. But I think you just pray and hope that, things get back to normal. And we see stadiums, starting here in the fall with football filled up again. But I think it's a day-by-day process, Taylor. One thing I learned during all this, self-reflecting, staying in my basement for 3 months, not being around my team and not being around interactions with humans, is you can't take things for granted. You better understand, we get to do this. We don't have to do this. We get to do this. We're fortunate all of us, whatever we're doing, we're able to do this. And I think that's what, the pandemic's really taught a lot of us in athletics. So yeah, it's kind of scary, but hopefully let's hope for the best.
And then going back into the team that you have next year, coming back for the Penguins in your 5th year, as we've mentioned already, but what needs to happen differently for you all to continue the success going into your third successful season with a winning record?
Yeah, good question. I think this time of year, you kind of reflect, we're reflecting on the 7 weeks we just had with our team. We were fortunate enough to get quite a few workouts in, implement a few things into our system, get our guys bigger, faster, stronger in the weight room, really develop some bonding situations. Every Wednesday we did a team bonding activity. We paintballed, we bowled, we did softball, we did cookouts, just trying to build that chemistry and that camaraderie. I think for us to have a great season, for us to have a memorable season, I think you got to be good on both sides of the ball. Anymore, the game of basketball is played on both sides. You got to be good offensively. You have to be efficient. You got to shoot high percentages. You got to be able to score the basketball. You got to get to the foul line. You got to make threes. And you got to get stops. You got to get out and run and get some easy baskets. I think defensively, we got to do a much better job of protecting the paint. Our 2-point field goal percentage was not any good last year. We got to do a better job being in the gaps, helping one another, contesting shots, and then finishing plays. But this league is going to be really good. This is my 5th year. A lot of coaches, going in their 3rd, 4th, 5th year. We do have some coaches been in the league a lot longer than that, but we got a lot of great coaches and, more importantly, a lot of great players. And our non-league schedule is going to be difficult. We're at Penn State to open up November 10th on Wednesday. Then, we'll finish our series with West Virginia December 22nd in Morgantown. So we're going to be battle tested in the non-league, that's for sure.
This will be your 2nd trip to Morgantown as a head basketball coach at Youngstown State. Whenever you set up something like this and leading into that, do you just sort of just sit back and you're just like, okay, where's my 85 DeLorean at? I mean, am I going back in time here? I mean, what are we doing here?
No, really what I'm trying to figure out is how we're going to get the ball reversed. How are we going to handle Coach Huggins' pressure? How are we going to keep the Mountaineers off the glass? And then certainly, how are we going to be able to compete? Because his teams just compete at such a high level. But, I was really proud of our team last year, Taylor. We played West Virginia, I thought, as good as we could. We fell a couple points short, but we were leading for most of the game. We made big plays, big shots, and it's always great to play a well-coached, physical team like West Virginia for us, because it gets us ready for league play. And I felt like when our kids competed for that, all 40 minutes in that game, we lost the game, but I think we won the game in some ways because it really boosted our confidence. Our players are really, really confident because I think at that time, West Virginia was a top 15 team in the country. And I think we felt like we let it slip away. And our guys, they had a little swagger, when we got back from Christmas break, playing with those guys. But it's difficult. The Coliseum's a great atmosphere. The student section down there is they're right on top of you. It's an awesome building. It's a historic building that we love to go, try to compete at.
And then finally, I'll end with this question. So, among all the coaches that you've either coached with, coached for, just worked with in general, who do you see yourself mimicking the most?
Man, I think that's too hard to. I don't think I could give you one guy because, I a little bit of Coach Massimino, a little bit of Jeff Young, a little bit of Bob Huggins, a little bit of Joe Mazzulla. Things I've talked with him about. I think that's too hard a question to answer. I hate to be that guy, but I'm taking a lot of stuff from a lot of these guys and stealing ideas from guys right now, in the NBA Summer League as I'm watching games. So, I don't know. I try to be myself anymore. I'm going into my 10th season as a head coach. You get better with time, I think. You get better with some experience. I've tried to get better each and every year. I try to really work at it in the offseason, getting better. And the players make you better. I think our game's in a great place. I think there's so many great college players and great programs that our game's in a good place. I think people love watching college basketball. I think there's nothing like the NCAA tournament. I think it's the best sporting event in the world.
Absolutely. I do agree with you. It literally, whenever March 1 hits, you're just like, okay, here comes a month long's worth of Christmas.
Yep.
That's just sort of
a
weird.
It's, we're one of the few teams in the country, Taylor, that have not played in the NCAA tournament. So it's our goal every day to try to take those steps toward that goal. And when we do finally do it here in Youngstown, I think this city is going to be so proud, our players, all their hard work. And, it's going to continue doing the right things day in and day out. But it's going to happen for this program. But yeah, March Madness, there's nothing like it. And can you imagine when you see that penguin logo there on CBS? It's going to be unbelievable.
Greg Gumbel will say, and coming in now into the field of 64, the Youngstown State Penguins. The Penguins of Youngstown State.
Well, the only thing you left off for the first time ever.
Yes, that was your cue. That was your cue.
Gotcha. Well, listen, man, I enjoyed this. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Coach. I appreciate your time. I mean, I learned a lot. You brought up a lot of great information. I'm very appreciative of that. So thank you.
You got it, buddy, man. Come see us on the 22nd.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Coach. I absolutely will. So thank you for your time.
You got it, buddy. Have a good year if I don't talk to you.
Yep. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye. And that will conclude episode 58 of Hoops Across the Mountain State with our terrific guest, Jerrod Calhoun of the Youngstown State Penguins, looking for their first NCAA tournament appearance in program history. That'll do it for me, your host, Taylor Kennedy. You can follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7, and you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. So without further ado, I will catch you all next time for episode 59 of Hoops Across the Mountain State. Thank you for listening and stay safe.